Merhabalar Harici.com.tr izleyicileri, ben Esra Karahindiba'nın önemli bir podcast yayınıyla karşınızdayız. Amerika'da seçimler gerçekleşti. Trump zaferini ilan etti. Ocak'ta Biden'ın görevi devretmesini bekliyoruz. Bir taraftan Suriye'de de önemli gelişmeler yaşanıyor. Konuğum Amerika Eski Dışişleri Bakan Yardımcısı Büyükelçi Bryza. Bakalım bu konuları nasıl değerlendirecek? Trump'ın gelmesiyle birlikte Rusya-Ukrayna savaşında artık bir ateşkese, bir barışa doğru gidilebilecek mi? Birlikte konuşmaya başlayacağız. Ambassador Bryza, thank you very much for coming on.
My pleasure to be with you. Thank you, Esra. Happy to be back.
Thank you. So many developments are happening in the world, in the US, in Syria. Something is happening between Russia and Ukraine too. Slovakian Prime Minister Fico was in Moscow first time, a European leader. He visited Moscow and talked with Russian President Vladimir Putin. So many topics we have, but we need a flow. So let's start with Syria.
Sounds good.
So, I don't need to repeat the developments. You're already very aware and following closely. What is your take on the latest situation?
Well, first and foremost, it's amazing how quickly everything unraveled. And I think it's indicative of how weak Iran has become and how Hezbollah was essentially destroyed by Israel, or nearly destroyed, and Iran was getting hit very hard by Israel in Syria itself. And Russia is so weak, and Russia is so focused on trying to continue its war against Ukraine. And so the usual supporters of the Assad regime, so Iran and then Hezbollah and Russia, were not there to help him. And I think not only were they so weakened, I think at least Tehran and Moscow, as well as Ankara, were tired of Assad's refusal to negotiate with the opposition. And we know for about 2 years, right, Ankara was trying to normalize relations with Damascus, and Assad was just resistant. So the first thing is that, okay, thank goodness, this horrible regime of torture is gone. It's shocking how quickly it happened. And it's really, for many, surprising at how much weaker Iran and Russia have become and how they've been exposed as being so weak. These are huge strategic setbacks for them. But for me, the most significant thing sitting here in Turkey is that this country is potentially the kingmaker. I don't think that Ankara was encouraging the HTS to launch the assault, but once it was underway, I think Turkey supported it and took advantage of it in the north to move the YPG PKK to the eastern side of the Euphrates and to liberate Manbij, as had long been Ankara's plan. And now I think with the Syrian National Army, I think Turkey is going to try to dismantle the YPG PKK in Syria. So it's a gigantic change.
Yes, you have said that Turkey is a kingmaker in this situation. President-elect Trump has also flattered Ankara. Meanwhile, Foreign Minister Fidan said that Turkey did not plan anything with any groups or with any countries. Just the situation was ready for opposition to go and overthrow Assad regime very quickly. Now we have another question. Yesterday, Fidan and Ashara gave a joint presser together, and the main idea is that YPG needs to just cancel its existence, and all Kurds can be part of Syria. They can take part in the government, and they will have equal rights with all other different ethnic groups living in Syria. So the main thing they're targeting, a main thing is like equal citizenship, minority rights, and etc. And first time ever, Germany says that YPG needs to drop weaponry. What will be the U.S. position on this? Because for Turkey, the main thing is by just talking about YPG, the U.S. continue to support this group because they say that it's their partner against ISIS. This is a condition for Turkey, and this is a condition for new Syrian interim government. What do you expect from Trump? What he will say?
Well, he already said that as Damascus was about to fall, that the U.S. should stay out of it, should not get involved, that fight is not the U.S.'s fight. And for a long time, in fact, during all of his presidency practically, he wanted the United States to withdraw its troops from Syria. He was persuaded to keep 900 in Deir ez-Zor, which have grown to 2,000, by the way, this year. We just learned that. It was just announced last week. But he clearly wants to get the U.S. troops out. And believes Syria is simply not strategically significant to the United States, or not as much as a lot of people assume, certainly not as strategically important as Syria is to Turkey, or to Iran, or to Russia. So I think he's going to be eager to close down the U.S. bases in Syria and get them out. But his number one concern is ISIS, or Daesh, as they're called here in Turkey. And so... yeah, the U.S., even just yesterday, the Biden administration's national security advisor, Jake Sullivan, said that the U.S. needs to continue working with the so-called Syrian Democratic Forces, which means the YPG, to operate and keep inside the prisons that are housing the ISIS operatives and their families. I don't see any reason why, though, that mission has to be conducted by the YPG. The HTS has said we can do it. HTS has fought ISIS or Daesh in the past. And so if the HTS develops its capable military, as you said, which is, well, it's not going to be YPG, but all the militias need to lay down their arms, and there's going to be a Syrian army for the whole country. I don't see any reason, in principle, why a national army that is led by an organization that has fought ISIS or Daesh in the past would be unable to carry out the mission of keeping the ISIS terrorists and their families inside the prisons. So with all that being said, much depends on how now relations evolve between Washington and the new leaders in Damascus. But I would expect President Trump to want to get all the U.S. troops out of there and hope that the U.S. can rely increasingly on the government of Syria, predominantly formed around the HTS, to protect against the resurgence of ISIS. But it very much depends on what Daesh or ISIS, how they behave now in coming weeks, and they've tried to reconstitute themselves. So some U.S. military former commanders are saying the U.S. and the SDF need to work very hard against ISIS on the ground in Syria. So there's a debate going on in Washington, but I know Trump will win the debate. He's the president, and I think he wants to get the U.S. soldiers out.
For some people, HTS is revolution fighters, they're heroes. For other people, for some analysts, they're grown by CIA or some American or British intelligence agency was feeding this group. There is so many different scenarios about HTS. Some were telling in this fast success behind there is US and Israel. But now we see that Minister Fidan was in Damascus together with Ashara. We understand that there is Turkey's support. So many people say very different things. What is your take? Do you think that the analysis written in the U.S. has any basis?
Well, I mean, it's just stupid for someone to say the U.S. Somehow organized HTS. It's still designated a terrorist organization by the United States. And until last week, when there was a visit by senior people from the State Department, there was a $10 million bounty, so a reward for anybody that would have killed al-Shara. That was lifted now? It was lifted because there was a good conversation, and my former colleague, Assistant Secretary of State for the Near East or Middle East, Barbara Leaf, said, yeah, we were pleasantly surprised by how constructive the discussion was, how much al-Shara, then al-Jolani, I think, still, is ready for what you were saying, Esra, a representative government where minority rights are respected. So, you know, if you created an organization, you generally don't designate it a terrorist group and offer a $10 million reward for killing its leader. I think that, as I said before, I don't believe that Ankara encouraged HTS to launch the attack, but of course, Ankara offered some support through the years. I mean, HTS could not have survived if it wasn't receiving materiel and physical support from the other side of the Turkish border. But there was always tension between HTS and then the militias in the Syrian National Army that Turkey has actively supported. So there are the SNA is a mix of Islamists and secular former soldiers of the Assad regime and ethnic minority tribal militias. So they're definitely supported by Turkey, but the HTS never received such direct support from Ankara. So why it all happened now? You said it, and we discussed it before. Now was just the moment of opportunity when Russia is weak and distracted, Iran is weakened, and Hezbollah is virtually dead. And everybody all of those three supporters of Assad were sick and tired of him not negotiating with the opposition. So it was just the moment for the collapse of the Assad regime, and Assad was as surprised as anybody. But Russia, I think, would have preferred to be able to protect Assad, as would have Iran, but they were simply unable to. And by failing to be able to keep Assad in office, or choosing not to, both Russia and Iran have sent signals to their proxies or other groups that need their support, which is that we're not going to be there for you at the end of the day. Israel, by the way, you mentioned Israel in your question. Of course, Israel is the one who played such a big role in weakening Iran and Hezbollah on the ground in Syria. So yeah, Israel played a big role, but not in coordination with Turkey.
But now Israel also trying to get more land by invading some land of Syria. What is your take on that?
There will be. I mean, HTS wants to be internationally recognized. It's against Islamist terror. It claims to be, even though it used to be Al-Nusra Front and al-Sharaa himself used to fight with Al-Qaeda. So it's too early to tell what the relationship will be like. I think just like Turkey, Israel has seen an opportunity and has taken action with its soldiers. I mean, I don't think Ankara is going to occupy northern Syria or try to control the land in the north, but it's going to do whatever it needs to do to destroy the YPG PKK in northern Syria. So Israel has a different set of objectives. It is to protect its territory that it occupies in the Golan Heights against another October 7th style attack. Occupying that land is illegal. It's contrary to international law, unless it's accepted by the country that actually is the recognized a recognized authority over that land and has jurisdiction over it. So that's a violation of international law. But I think that probably al-Sharaa believes he's got much more important things to worry about right now. Israel took the action because al-Sharaa and HTS is unable to do anything. I mean, Israel destroyed apparently much of the Assad regime's weaponry. So I don't think HTS has the ability to resist what Israel is doing.
What do you think this overall situation in Syria will bring new in Turkish-American relationship?
I think an improvement. Donald Trump likes President Erdogan. He's made that clear. He respects him, but more than respect him, he likes Erdogan. And when the Biden administration first came in, a lot of journalists asked me, what do you think is going to happen in Turkish-U.S. relations? And I said, well, in the beginning, they're going to worsen because Trump and Erdogan get along so well that if it's like a mathematical equation, if you take one element of that equation out, then the value of that equation is lower because the two leaders got along so well. So with Trump coming back, I would expect a priori relations to improve, number one. Number two, as we said before, Trump wants to get U.S. troops out and would only do that if Trump was confident that its NATO ally, Turkey, could help stabilize the situation overall. And Trump, as self-styled consummate deal maker, knows for there to be a deal with Turkey to cooperate in Syria, the YPG has to be, Turkey has to take care of the YPG as it wishes to. And Trump has made no statements of resistance to that approach. He said that it seems Turkey is conducting a hostile takeover of Syria, and as Foreign Minister Fidan said yesterday, he took that Fidan thought that was a compliment that Trump was paying to Erdogan for being smart, for being shrewd, for seizing the opportunity and securing Turkey's national interests. So all signals seem to be positive in my mind. The F-35 question, let's recall that Trump did not he did not want to ban Turkey from the F-35 program. He was pushed by his advisors. And he did not want to impose sanctions on the presidency for defense industries. He was forced to do that by the U.S. Congress. He would have much preferred to let more U.S. troops leave and let Turkey take care of northern Syria.
Okay. What I remember, he was so reactive after this operation Olive Branch, which was coming after Euphrates Shield operation. So I remember he was very reactive and very negative against Turkey and Turkish politicians, defense industry officials. I remember he was telling, I'm going to ruin your economy. And after some time, after it took like 1-2 years to come to a point after negotiation to shake hands and to continue very normal relations. Yeah. So Turkey and America now in a very good position. And you say that it's mostly his advisors. So now already most of his cabinet is released. So we know about the names. Can you tell us about your comments? What do you think the Deputy Defense Minister, for example, announced yesterday, and Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, whom is he going to work in security department? So what is your overall comment? Well, which is related to Turkey. I mean, his choices of his cabinet and how it would affect Turkey.
So what I said was, in his previous administration, Trump was persuaded by his advisors to ban Turkey from the F-35 program, and then was forced by Congress to impose sanctions. But that was a President Trump who didn't really feel comfortable in the job yet. He didn't know how to be president. He learned on the job. He didn't expect to become president. This time he really wanted to be reelected, and he knows how to operate now. He's confident in his abilities. So I don't think he'll be anywhere near as dependent on the opinions of his advisors as he was previously. So his advisors mostly are going to have to follow Trump's lead rather than Trump taking their advice and changing his desired course of action. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, designee or nominee, is a traditional Republican when it comes to foreign policy. So he's tough on Russia and its invasion and occupation of Ukraine. Rubio, while he has a lot of Greek Americans in Florida, especially in New Smyrna, he has called for help for Turkey to address its concerns about terrorism in northern Syria. I mean, in the past, it called for the U.S. to allow for more military assistance to flow to Turkey. And he, his view overall, I think, is based on NATO as a centerpiece. So he'll value the strategic importance of Turkey, which is NATO's second largest military. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, who's currently a member of the House of Representatives, is similarly a traditional Republican on foreign policy. So all the things I said about Rubio. Pete Hegseth, the designee for the Secretary of Defense, is not so well known. He was a soldier, and then he ended up being a commentator on Fox News. He doesn't have any experience managing a large organization, and you could argue that the U.S. Department of Defense is maybe the largest organization in the world. So he is facing criticism about whether he has the management expertise to be able to run it. There are also accusations about some sexual improprieties in his past. And then finally, the last important one is Tulsi Gabbard, who's the nominee to be the Director of National Intelligence, which is a position that oversees all the U.S. intelligence agencies. And there are many of them, but it's not just the CIA, but there's also Defense Intelligence Agency, many other intelligence agencies. So she's a Democrat originally, ran for president as a Democrat from Hawaii. But in recent years, she's been really strange on Syria. She went to Damascus and met with Assad. She's been very complimentary of President Putin and supportive of his invasion of Ukraine. So she's attracting a lot of controversy as well as somebody who may be untrustworthy when it comes to keeping America's secrets. But none of them have said much about Turkey other than Rubio. So I think they're all going to end up following President Trump's lead. And as we've already discussed, I think President Trump is, at least he's going to aspire to get the relations between the two countries back on a more positive pathway, and maybe, you know, a resurrection of a strategic partnership, which there should be, because they're, again, NATO's two members with the biggest militaries.
That was really informative. Thank you very much for this information and comments. Let's talk about President Trump's famous statement, I'm going to end the war in Ukraine in 24 hours. Is it possible? What are the scenarios? What is going to Trump tell President Putin, okay, that's it, NATO is not going to expand towards Russia anymore, and we're going to cancel the membership issue of Ukraine to join NATO. We will not consider it, it is cancelled. And what could be the scenarios? How comes it will be possible for him to be so self-confident that he knows that he's going to end this war? What do you think he will be doing, saying? What's going to be his policy?
Yeah, he's always self-confident, and he's already working on it. And we've seen him having an impact already. So I think what his approach will be is to pressure both Zelensky and Putin. He's said in recent days that he wants to end the war, as quickly as possible. He's not in favor of Ukraine joining NATO, but he said, this surprised many people, that the United States and Europe should continue providing Ukraine as much military support as Ukraine needs to be able to defend itself against Russia in the future. More specifically, I don't think Trump, well, he definitely hasn't announced his view on whether or not Russia should be able to continue occupying Ukraine's territory in Crimea and Donbass and elsewhere in Zaporizhia and in Kherson. You may recall that in March of 2022, when the Ukrainians and the Russians were meeting first at the Antalya Diplomacy Forum and then here in Istanbul, there was a proposal that said that Russia should withdraw all of its troops that had invaded since February of 2022, and that Ukraine would say it's not going to join NATO, and then the legal status of Donbass and Crimea would be talked about in 15 years' time. So you would delay discussion of that issue. I think the outcome will be something like that. It'll be hard to persuade Russia to pull all of its troops out that invaded after February 2022, but that's to be negotiated. I think Zelensky is increasingly ready to see the war end. He's been talking for months about wanting there to have Russia present at the next round of peace talks. There was one round that was in Switzerland in June. Both Russia and Ukraine had been discussing in the middle of summer a possible agreement to refrain from attacking each other's energy infrastructure. And at one point, in early August, I think it was, I can't remember exactly, but I remember Zelensky said, well, if we can reach the agreement not to attack each other's energy infrastructure, maybe we can reach a peace agreement overall. So Zelensky, he too wants to end the war. Putin wants to end the war. I mean, Putin is losing 1,200 soldiers every single day, dead or wounded, 1,200. Both sides have lost hundreds of thousands of soldiers and civilians on the Ukrainian side. So the challenge for Zelensky is to survive politically if he acquiesces to Russia occupying Ukrainian territory.
Another thing, is he going to accept the annexations announced by Russia?
Yeah, that's the same point, right? No, I don't think he can accept annexation. But then the question is, can he accept occupation? And for how long? I think he'll have no choice but to accept occupation. But annexation, I personally think, is too much. But there's a negotiation that's already underway.
Some international relations professors I interviewed, for example, Franco Bruni. I was in Milan in the previous weeks, and I talked to him. He said Zelensky, in some point, needs to understand that it is gone, and if it is the main condition for a peace deal, maybe he should consider it. Maybe Trump will have a similar opinion, because he will look at the overall picture. You know, not 2 cities is annexed. Very shortly, in Georgia, there's protests. In Serbia, there's protests. Syria, you know the situation. EU has gas problem. Prime Minister Fico visited Moscow, I told at the beginning of the show. And so many things are happening in the world. What's going to be the American priority in the new term of President-elect Trump?
In Europe, you mean?
in the world, in Europe, in our region. Yeah, Europe and Middle East.
I mean, the world, how many hours do you want to go?
Yeah.
Well, Europe doesn't have a natural gas problem anymore. It's done a great job. It's taken care of that issue. It's getting liquid natural gas from many sources, but Trump just said, Europe, buy more U.S. liquid natural gas or I'm going to apply tariffs against you. So Trump, his priority with everybody, doesn't matter if friend or foe, NATO ally or not, his priority is to have a trade balance that is not disadvantageous to the U.S. In other words, for a country to be treated as friendly, that country needs to buy at least as much goods and services from the United States as the U.S. buys from it. That's his approach. In terms of gas, yeah, if Europe is worried about new sources of gas, even beyond what it's getting now, he's saying, buy it from the United States. So that'll be a cornerstone of his approach to Europe. It's a really unorthodox approach. I mean, historically, Republicans, and since World War II, have believed in free trade, not in using trade as a weapon, but he's going to use trade as a political weapon. He is no fool. I think he respects Putin, but also realizes what Putin is, which is not a friend of the United States. As far as Fico or Orban, he likes Orban because Orban's a tough guy, but Orban is nothing. I mean, Hungary is too small to be consequential to the U.S., and Slovakia even smaller or even less consequential. So those guys, I don't think he'll really care about. He cares about the big countries, right? He cares about China. He cares about how to deal with Russia. He cares about Iran. Otherwise, in Europe, it's going to be, what's the trade balance looking like? And most importantly, for NATO members, he wants them to not only to fulfill their NATO spending goal of 2% of GDP and military spending for each NATO state, but he wants to increase the number he just announced to 5%, which is impossible for most European economies.
I think Hungary is very important. It's the main contact point for Turkic world, all this Turkish stream, Turkmen and Kazakh gas to go to Europe. For Europe, I mean, Hungary is speaking on behalf of Europe with the Turkic world, and somehow it is very important for Europe, but you say not for Trump.
Not for Trump. He couldn't care less. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Did you finish your comments, previous ones?
Sure.
What is the American priority?
Well, I just said in Europe, Trump's priority, yeah. But there are lots of different views. Trade is his main focus, and spending not just 2% now of GDP on defense, but he's calling for up to 5%. He's no longer saying that NATO is obsolete. I think he recognizes how important, how useful NATO is. Yeah, and otherwise, he has no particularly strong strategic views on France or Germany, which are politically a mess right now. Who knows what's going to happen with them? I think he likes Giorgia Meloni because she's tough. But other than that, I don't think he has any strategy toward Europe. Trade and defense spending. Buy more American liquid natural gas.
Yeah, so good luck to the world. Thank you very much for this great talk.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Amerika Birleşik Devletleri Eski Dışişleri Bakan Yardımcısı Bryza ile konuştuk. Suriye'deki durumu, Trump'ın yeni dönemini, beklenen politikaları, Rusya-Ukrayna savaşı bitebilir mi? Bunları değerlendirdik. İzlediğiniz için teşekkürler. Hoşça kalın.